Whistle watchers, welcome back. A huge weekend of international rugby, plenty to get stuck into, but we're back on the farm and I got a apprentice and he's really dressed for the farm work.
Oh, city slicker. Out my comfort zone. Good to be back. I'll do some work for you next week, Nigel.
Yeah, you bet you will.
Pay me well. Let's see what we got coming up. Should Cam Roygar's try have been disallowed in Edinburgh? Was Josh Lord in an offside position? Nigel will expertly talk us through this one. And what does it take for a referee to be fit enough to referee at the highest level? All that and more on this week's episode of Whistle Watch. Right, let's kick off the decision, that Tadhg Beirne red card in Chicago. Obviously, we couldn't comment too much last week because there was an ongoing process. Since being viewed by the disciplinary panel that red was a bit too harsh. Do you want to talk us through it?
Yeah, so you can understand how they sent that to the bunker. But the key thing to remember here is when Barrett gets the ball, he's sort of getting it unexpectedly. So Beirne is not expecting now to make that tackle. So then obviously all this is happening and he goes sort of like this. So it's more of a defensive reaction rather than sort of leading into somebody with the shoulder. And that is the key what the disciplinary would have looked at. They'd have looked at that and said, well, it's more of a defensive reaction, absorbing rather than... He could have probably done more, mind, to get back, which would have made it much easier with the officials on the day. And that's why then it should have been a yellow card and not a 20-minute red card.
And we saw Bun Barrett come out in the press as well, public comments supporting the tackle. It's not often we see that from players.
No, it's not. It does happen occasionally, but not very often at all. And I think probably what Bun Barrett was thinking was exactly what the majority of us was thinking. That doesn't look like a red card for me, and obviously it shouldn't be.
All right, so we'll stick with Ireland. Facing Japan in Dublin, back from Chicago. Charlie Lawrence gets a yellow card, lifting the player above horizontal, but it was deemed a low degree of danger.
Yeah, so what you can't do, because remember, when you're tackling somebody, you're hitting somebody, you're driving them back, momentum is meaning you're going to lift that player, you're going to drive him back. And that's fine, that's legal, that's within the laws of the game. Now what you can't do is sort of lift a player up and then put him in a dangerous situation. You either drop him or you sort of lift and turn him, which means the legs go above the horizontal. So if you tackle somebody and you drive them back and the momentum takes them up and back, that's perfectly legal. But the lifting and then the turning, or the lifting and then putting them in a dangerous position and dropping them, then that becomes dangerous. And in this instance here, although the degree of danger wasn't that high, it's then landed up with a correct yellow card. If they'd have deemed it to be a lift, a twist, and then down on the head or a dangerous drop, then it would have been a red card, but a yellow card correct.
And you see so many players nowadays, they know they're getting into that position, they just try and rescue that player.
And that's the key. If you find yourself in that situation as a tackler, you then try and do all you can to bring him back down safely. It'll avoid a penalty.
All right, so in that game, Nigel, and this has been a big talking point this weekend, a player who is part of the ruck picking up the ball and running through the ruck. It happened twice this weekend, once in Edinburgh, once in Dublin. We'll start with the one in Dublin. This time it's Shukei Takeuchi, picks up the ball, he's part of the ruck. When isn't that allowed?
Two very similar, but there is a key difference in the both, which we'll explain in a minute. But on the one in Ireland, a ruck is formed when you're on your feet and you're bound onto a defensive player who's on his feet as well. Ruck is formed. What you can't do in the ruck is pick the ball up with your hands. So in this instance here, what he does, the player is bound in the ruck, okay? So what he does now, he puts his hand down, he picks the ball up. You can't play the ball with your hands in the ruck. If he wants to do that, he's got to detach and then pick the ball up, which means the ruck is then over. But because he's still in the ruck, puts his hand down, the ball is sort of in between his legs, so still in the ruck, and then he picks the ball up and then he goes forward. So
even if you just got one hand resting on the defensive player?
No, well, not really, no. Binding is, in law, binding is from your hand to your shoulder. So basically you're about it. If you were just at a hand on the back, and then does that, then it would be deemed the ruck is over, and then, which means also the defence can come round and play the ball as well, because the ball is now out. So that's the key thing there. The ruck is formed. If you want to pick up the ball, the ruck must be over. The ruck needs to be over then by you detaching. The ball is now out, available to everybody, as long as the players come from one side and don't dive on it, and then you can pick the ball up. But in this instance, he's bound in, picks the ball up. That's not allowed.
Then we move on to Edinburgh. The All Blacks beating Scotland, but they had a wonderful start, the All Blacks, and Cam Roygar scored a fabulous try. Josh Lord picking the ball up, very similar position and puts Roygaard in for the try. Why wasn't he penalised?
Right. Key difference here, it's not a ruck. You don't have any Scottish players on their feet bound onto that New Zealand player. So you don't have a ruck. So what you have now is a tackle situation. And then the law that we've just discussed does not apply because it's not a ruck. So in the tackle area...
There's one Scottish player on the floor, isn't there?
Yes, so that's irrelevant. You're on the floor, you're out of the game. You've got to be on your feet. Because there's no ruck formed, it's now a tackle, which means this guy picking the ball up is not picking the ball up in a ruck, which you're not allowed to do. He's picking the ball up in a tackle situation, which is perfectly legal and allowed because he's got 1 foot behind the ball. Now, if he had 2 feet in front of the ball and the ball is behind him, that would be illegal because you're in front of the ball, which means you're in an offside position. But because he had 1 leg back and the ball was in front of that leg, he's quite entitled to do what he did. That's why rugby is so beautiful and so complex.
Smart play.
Smart play.
Smart play. So, and I'm confused by this, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is what Italy did many years ago. If that tackle's on the floor and you've got 1 player from 1 team standing over it, you can't then come offside and attack from the other side.
Now, you could back then when Italy did that quite famously against England, and Roman Pat told the English players, I am the referee, not your coach. Yes. Wonderful character, Roman. They changed the law after that. So what they did then, even though a ruck is not formed, you still have a defensive line which the defenders must get behind, which prevents them coming round and doing a negative tactic in the game, really. So they changed that after that game. So there is an offside line, but not the same ruck law as playing the ball with your hands in the ruck.
All right, good talking point that, Nigel. Hopefully clarifies some bits. Let's stick with Murrayfield, and Scotland probably should have won. 3 yellow cards to the All Blacks. I think Leroy Carter's was pretty straightforward. Trip, yellow card. Let's come to Adi Surveyor's yellow. So they score a maul try, and the try is awarded on the spot. It's not a penalty try, but he still awards a yellow card to Adi Surveyor. We don't see that too often.
No, you don't, unless there's been a warning or the action was actually clearly cynical. The key thing to remember here is that if Scotland hadn't scored, that would have been a penalty try. So if you award a penalty try, there has to be a yellow card, as we discussed last week. But the referee felt in this instance that this action was cynical, and quite rightly so, a yellow card is given. Because what people don't realise in the bigger picture, imagine if he didn't, because he scored, you go, oh, don't worry, they scored. But they still should be down to 14 men. So which means Scotland then have the advantage of playing against 14 men. So if something is a clear yellow card, whether the team scores or not, the referee should still give the yellow card. And
so if I'm the defending team, I think sometimes in that situation, just let the team score in the corner, right? Because it counts against you. If you stop them and it's a penalty try, guarantees 7 points. You'd rather the guy at the outside half or kicker have to take the kick from the touchline.
You're right, because if they hadn't collapsed that and let them score, which I suppose goes against everything you do as a player in defence, then they wouldn't have given the yellow card away, and the kick is further out in a penalty try situation. So yeah, it happened in Wales, Scotland, in Cardiff last year, where if Wales hadn't scored, there would have been a penalty try. We lost the game by a point or 2 points. So we would have won the game if a penalty try was given, but Wales scored. The key thing with the penalty try to remember as well is this. If a try would have been scored in a more advantageous position, then you still award a penalty try even if the try was scored. So if this maul is going for the line, and it's going to be a penalty try if you don't score, but you do, you still give the try there. But if you feel there was an act of foul play, and if it wasn't for that act of foul play, Scotland would have scored a bit closer to the posts, you would still give a penalty try even though they have scored. But if they do score, you don't give a penalty try unless it would have been scored in a better position.
Simple enough.
Simple.
Right, let's go on to our first Emirates fan question. Peter Davis. Right, a number of rule changes have been trialled in the Super Rugby Pacific and came into the international sphere after the Six Nations this year. Is there a case that this created 2 streams of referee, i.e. Australia and New Zealand referee versus the rest of the world? And why was there confusion during the Lions series and the Rugby Champ when Northern Hemisphere referees had their first outings under the new regime?
Nah, I don't really quite buy that argument. I can see why they're asking the question, but just remember, referees work closely together. So everything in refereeing comes from the World Rugby umbrella. Yep. So that's the very top of the game. So everything, the way the game is played, the laws of the game, refereed interpretation, is all fed down from World Rugby, which means every single referee, whatever country you are then, should be consistent in the way that they approach and referee the game. The referees really work hard together. They'll be in meetings or Zoom meetings during tournaments. They will come together like they've done in Lensbury, like we saw last week, to discuss stuff like this. So no, referees will adapt pretty easily to the law changes, just like the players do. The difficulty with the law changes is because this way the Southern Hemisphere, Northern Hemisphere, different countries, seasons, different time of the year, it's virtually impossible to have this as the start of everybody's season because we are in total different hemispheres. But certainly when referees come together for an international tournament, then they're all on the same page.
What were the biggest difference you found refereeing Southern Hemisphere teams?
I think it was a style of play, I think. You know, so if you look, and not be disrespectful to New Zealand and Australia, for example, who are wonderful, wonderful teams, they always play the game in that open sort of style. They're never renowned for being big mauling sides, big scrummaging sides. Then when you referee South Africa, the Argentinians, although they've changed now, they've got a complete side now. The French, the English, always big, strong mauling sides.
For that advantage in the tight. Yeah.
And then Ireland, Wales, Scotland have always been sort of more sort of, you know, competing every ball, you know, loose and ball, you know. Yeah. Obviously under your era, Wales played a different type of game under that era. So it's more to do with the style. But yeah, the Southern Hemisphere certainly was a different sort of style of game. Weather contributing a lot to that as well, I think.
Let's go on to Twickenham, England, Fiji, and that incident involving Ravu Tamada and Emmanuel Raboso in the air. I mean, it looked ugly, didn't it? It looked like, whoa, I think everyone watching that game, took a slight relief when Manny Raboso got straight back up. Now that went to the bunker, you know, it was a yellow card in review. Should that have been a straight red? Were you surprised he came back and it wasn't upgraded?
I was surprised he came back and it wasn't upgraded. I'm not surprised it should have been a 20-minute red card rather than a straight red card. Although there could be an argument, if the degree of danger, as it was, there could be an argument, total recklessness, there could be an argument for a red card. But I would think in most situations that would have and should have landed up in a 20-minute red card because the action is there. Look at what happens to the player. I'm glad you're pronouncing these names because I'm hopeless with names. He sort of topples over and that's really, really dangerous. So yeah, that should have been a 20-minute red card without a shadow of a doubt. That action was really reckless and dangerous.
Now, a quick break from Whistle Watch. Nigel, viewers, have you ever wondered how fit referees have to be to officiate at the top level?
A lot of the time the referees will operate in the low intensity zones, but the game defining moments usually occur in terms of the high speed efforts. So you know they have to be extremely aerobically fit, but also have that capability to, when the moment comes, to be able to accelerate and have good basic ground speed.
I don't know what the test is called, but it's a repeated sprint test basically.
It's an extremely taxing fitness test, 8 repetitions of 50 metres.
Yeah, a lot of lactate build up. You get through kind of the first 2 and then it's literally just like a black hole trying to get to the end, honestly.
You wouldn't be able to be placed in this room if you weren't competitive. We challenge ourselves to win those fitness tests.
For people who think we don't commit physically, it's huge. But we need this because sometimes game is too fast, too exhausting, and we need that capacity to handle the pressure.
Where they're knocking over cones, that could be symptomatic of bumping into a player or tripping over some player's foot, which then puts them at a disadvantage in the following sequence of play. So it certainly replicates the game's demands.
Interesting one for me because I've just returned from a 5-week injury. So I did my knee in a game, got wiped out. And this was sort of my first full optimal run. So so it was good one to get done, just for reassurance ahead of the test matches in the next few weeks.
I suppose this is what's to prepare us like training should always be harder. And it gives you a benchmark to be able to build into the next testing window.
It's a good training tool, so I would advocate utilising it at some stage away from here as well. Well done, thank you.
Right, thanks there to Wayne Proctor, who's the head of S&C for World Rugby's match officials. Nige, how did you get on in the fitness department?
He was my SSC when I was when he was with the WIU as well, and a good SSC guy. Yeah, good, tough taskmaster, but that you want. Yeah, look, no, you've got to be. You've got to be fit to referee a game of rugby. Gone are the days years ago where you referee to keep fit. You've got to be fit now to referee, particularly at the top end of the game where the ball in play time has increased, the speed, the game. So you've got to be fit. I was never... So if you look at the referees who made the World Cup finals, I guess, Jerome Gassez, myself, Wayne Barnes, although we were fit, we were never the same level of fitness as some of these referees that are reffing now, for example. And you didn't need to be. You needed a good base level of fitness, and that was important, because the most important thing in the game, you need to be fit, of course you do, but it doesn't matter how fit you are. If you don't know what to do when you get there, then the fitness is irrelevant. Yeah. So it's a good level of fitness. So, and everybody has a different level. You know, I was reffing in the World Cup in Japan at 50 years of age. Well, I was never going to be as fit as a referee who's 27, but I didn't need to be, as long as I was fit enough to referee the game. So I was at my fittest probably from around 2010 till about 2016, 17, World Cup final 2015. That I was at my fitness. But I was always fit enough to referee the game.
Yeah, that's good. It's that fit enough, isn't it? And that's a good message, I think, to young referees, isn't it? Yeah. You know, if they want to come into the game and ref. I guess it's that clarity of thought in the moment as well, because I always found that as a player, the fitter you were, the quicker you could think.
And especially as a referee, because if you get tired towards the last 15, 20 minutes of the game, where sometimes in a close game, that's where all the big decisions... Doesn't matter what you've done in the first 60, everybody will be looking at that last 20. And if you're tired, you know, you're not fit enough, or you haven't prepared well, you know, not had too much on in the week, and you're physically tired, then you're not going to be as mentally sharp as well, and that's hugely important.
Did you ever have to take a breather on the pitch? Big decisions, just go, actually, I need 10 seconds here. Just to...
The only time, only once ever I had cramp in the game. I was very lucky with injury-wise. Now, I never pulled a hamstring, never had a calf. Probably I didn't run fast enough, but tweaked my calf then. I had a cramp on my calf in the South Africa-New Zealand game in Ellis Park in 2013, where it was just back and forth, and altitude as well. So I blame the altitude, not my fitness.
All right, Nige, on to Cardiff. Principality, Argentina, obviously record score against Wales. Disappointing as Welshmen. Anyway, Ben Thomas in that game gets a yellow card on the field. Happens so often now in matches, isn't it? Bit of gamesmanship, people holding people back. Ben Thomas, unfortunately, in this instant, lashes out with his foot. Can't quite clearly see whether he's made head contact or not, but ref gives him a marching orders, yellow card for review. What do you make of that?
Yeah, very interesting one here, actually, because it infuriates me as a referee. Players holding people in the tackle area to get a penalty, holding legs, preventing a player getting back to the defensive line, or holding the attacker, preventing him to support, and then the natural reaction is to swing somebody off or kick the arm away. So when I was watching this, I thought, I can't really see what he's done wrong here. He's just to crick a player off who's holding him. But then we look at the footage more clearly, and this is the key thing here. So if Ben Thomas sort of knows what he's doing, so what he's doing this action, kicking out, and he can see exactly where that Argentinian player is, and he catches the guy in the head, there is no defence. Whether you're held or not, it's going to be
It's not a reaction, is it?
No.
He looks
and he's doing it. And that is the key, which when I was looking into the stadium, I thought, I couldn't see that. But certainly that's what the footage shows. So what they couldn't see was a direct contact with the head. So then they send it to the bunker to see if there was, because it gives the guy in the bunker then a bit more time to get all the angles and make sure that they're going to get it right. They can't see it, so he comes back on, which I think is an understandable, followable decision, because they can't see contact with the head. The only thing I will say here, Ben Thomas is very, very lucky, Jamie, because if he had just sort of get off me and not looked back, it would have been a yellow card, maybe just a penalty, because the guy was holding him. But because he's seeing what he's doing, as you said, then we go up to another level. Some other referees may well would have given that, but on this day, They did give the yellow, which you're going, okay, I can follow that. So Ben Thomas, very, very lucky.
If that's a deliberate kick and he makes contact with the head...
Straight red.
Straight red.
I would say straight red, yeah, because you can't kick a player in the face. No, straight red. Straight red.
And does that make a difference if it's the head or any other part of the body?
Not really. Within the laws of the game, if you're... Now, we're talking different here. So you actually kick out to somebody, then you're looking at a red card no matter really where you catch them. But if you are sort of, get off me and you catch him on different part of the body, then that would be slightly different. But yeah, a kick in general, you kick a player in the game, it usually is a red card.
Right, Nigel, another Emirates fan question to finish us off this week. Portugal and Uruguay, Santiago Lopez got a 20-minute red card over the weekend, but he seemed rather passive in the tackle. What did you make of it? I also want to ask you why refs can't give a 20-minute red card themselves. It has to go to the bunker for the other ref in the bunker to make that decision.
So he's not bent enough, he's not down low enough to make the tackle, and he makes contact with the head. And when he actually, though he's down, when he makes contact, he's actually going in. So we have a high degree of danger then. Yeah. So the referee then sends it it reaches the threshold, it goes to the bunker, and they give it a correct 20-minute red card.
It's never a full red. It's
never a full red.
No,
it's not a full red, no. So now, to answer your second question then, endless replays on the screen, a referee having to sort of decide under the pressure, all the crowd on you, and you've got to look at the screen, maybe a bit more difficult to see things yourself, so they then send it to the bunker. I am glad that they do allow the referee, and as Angus Gardner did very well on the weekend, if they feel something's a straight red, then you give the straight red. But if it's going to be a 20-minute red card, it goes to the bunker through that threshold, which means then that the bunker can only give a 20-minute red card. So the bunker cannot upgrade a 20-minute red card to a full red card. Only the referee can do that on the pitch. I can understand, and there is a point where it's good to take the pressure away and get the game flowing, and then they make the decision off the field. But I still believe, as a referee, I would want to make that decision myself. So if I'm looking at something and going, right, for me, this is a 20-minute red card, I would like to have that input. I would say, look, this is a 20-minute red card for me. You're going to the bunker. If there's anything different or any angles I haven't seen, then I'll come. It'll come back and let us know. I still think,
and allow that referee in the bunker to maybe upgrade to full.
And he can say, no, I still think as a referee, you make that decision. You are the referee. You are the best person, you're on the pitch. Because not being disrespectful to people in the bunker, but a lot of the people in the bunker may not have been at that international level, experiencing, and not just that, it's the fact, when you're on the field, you have a feel of what everything is about. Yeah. It's the same as if you're on the bench in rugby, or if you're watching in the stands, or you're watching on a TV monitor, you don't really appreciate the feel. Exactly, yeah. So that's the way it is at the moment. But I certainly would prefer a referee to have the option of making that decision himself, because that's why you're there, because you're the best person to referee the game.
Unfortunately, we can't comment on that Lou Diaga tackle in Paris. Ongoing disciplinary process, but we will talk about it next week. Right, that's it. Another huge weekend of rugby. Thanks as always, Nigel, for your amazing insight. Good man.
My pleasure. Dress appropriately next week, please.
Cheers, mate. Right, also keep your eyes peeled for our new Whistle Watch podcast, The Hot Seat. It's definitely not one to miss. Until next time, goodbye.